Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to Copper Jacket TV. So the ATF has just dropped their final rule on pistol braces. We've been waiting on this one for quite a while. We knew it was coming. It's no surprise, but I have it right in front of me here. It's a pretty long read, about 219 pages or so. A lot of it is just definitions and irrelevant stuff that we already know, but a lot of it has some pretty important information in it. So let's get to it. This channel is proud to be sponsored by the USCCA, absolutely one of the best resources and best memberships you could ever have in your wallet. They will teach you how to respond before and after a self-defense incident. They have a 24/7 emergency hotline. They will get somebody out there to take care of you and to speak for you, a lawyer of your choice. So definitely worth taking a look at the USCCA. With your membership, you get that self-defense liability insurance as well. So check them out down below. Let's get to it. Okay, so like I said before, this is a pretty long document. This document goes on and on and on. A lot of it is just definitions, right? Definitions from the GCA, definitions from the NFA, how they're applied to this final rule, and it talks about previous understandings of the device, stabilizing braces, and how it was applied in the past, and how they're making changes to that, and so forth. So a lot of it is just processes, the process that they went through in order to get here. So there are some pertinent things. We're going to read those here in just a second, but I want to start off by summarizing this because I think that most people aren't going to read it. It's just too long. It's just too cumbersome. So let me break this down. The first thing I want to say is it seems like, based on everything that I'm reading here, that just about everything that has a barrel length less than 16 inches and has a stabilizing brace equipped is going to be considered an SBR. Because, like they say several times in this document, it increases the rear surface area, allowing it to be shouldered, constituting either a design or a redesign to an SBR. So, again, anything that has an increased surface area on the back can be considered an SBR if it's equipped with a barrel less than 16 inches. That's what I'm reading from this. There is going to be factoring criteria for sure. They have factoring criteria like what type of optic is it using? Does it have a magnified optic? Does that magnified optic have eye relief that would require it to be so close to your eye that you'd almost inadvertently have to shoulder the arms? So you'd have to shoulder it, and therefore it'd be considered a redesign and so forth. It'd be considered an SBR and would have to be registered under the NFA with this. So again, just about everything that I read here, if you were to put it in some type of graph, would lead you to have to register it under the NFA. So one thing that really concerned me about this document was, it's like on page 10 or 11, maybe it's on page 12, one of those pages, is when they say that people who have been using these for years now, prior to any, rule-making changes or anything like that, have essentially been using unregistered SBRs that should be classified under the NFA. They're saying that they're going to use their law enforcement discretion to give those people a pass and allow them to register them over the next 120 days. So over the next 120 days from the time that it's entered into the federal registry, and we think that that'll happen early next week, probably not on Monday, but more than likely on Tuesday or Wednesday, this will be entered into the federal registry, and then it'll be 120 days past that people will have time to, register them as, an NFA item. But they did talk about people that have been using it all this time, basically have been using, something that is technically illegal without that tax stamp. So I found that really strange that they would say that and then say that they're going to use their law enforcement discretion to basically allow those people who've been using them to get by with it. It's kind of scary. So let me go ahead and read some important information here if you guys still want to stick around and hear a little bit more about it. And this is some of the more important information that I found in this document that you might find interesting as well. Now, before I read this, let me make one thing very, very clear here. Congress makes law. Agencies cannot create law that creates criminals and new statutes and things like that. They can't do it. That's why they're trying to say that it's not creating new law. It's just simply applying the NFA and GCA to these items. So they're using a law that Congress had already passed in order to be the vehicle for their new regulations. That's what they're saying, but that's not what's actually happening here. This is going to have an effect on hundreds of thousands of people, if not millions of people, across the country. That's broad. It's overwhelming. It goes against the Second Amendment, our constitutional rights, and get ready for the lawsuits because those lawsuits are absolutely 100% coming. So let me go ahead and read you some stuff here that I think is kind of pertinent. So it says here, this is kind of starting on the end of page 11, after they go over, the classification of the brace and, what it means and under a 16-inch barrel and so forth. It kind of starts here, so try and, bear with me, you'll get it. The revised definition reflects the department's understanding of the best interpretation of the statute, and it is immediately effective. In addition, because prior ATF classifications of firearms equipped with a brace device did not employ this correct understanding of the statutory terms, all such prior classifications are no longer valid. Okay, so basically any classification that existed prior to this, they have wiped that classification out. This is the only one that counts. So it says, while firearms equipped with stabilizing braces or other rearward attachments may be submitted to ATF for a new classification determination, a majority of the existing firearms equipped with a stabilizing brace are likely to be classified as rifles because they are configured for shoulder fire based on the factors described in this rule. So, I mean, they already say right there, a vast majority are going to be considered SBRs. Because many of these firearms generally have a barrel less than 16 inches, they are likely to be classified short barrel rifles subject to regulation and registration under the NFA and GCA. Consequently, many parties in possession of weapon brace combinations that ATF did not specifically classify in the past being subject to the NFA may have been violating the NFA by possessing an unregistered rifle with a barrel less than 16 inches. And that's kind of like what I was saying before. They're saying that people have been basically breaking the law this whole time, even though, it's ridiculous. In addition, where the department is overruling ATF's previous classification letters, possessors of the firearms equipped with stabilizing braces that were at issue in those letters may also be in possession of unregistered NFA firearms. Prior to the publication of the NPRM and this rule to clarify the regulatory definition of a rifle, many parties did not register those firearms due to a variety of factors discussed in this rule. Therefore, it's exercising its enforcement discretion. The department provides affected persons opportunities that they can choose from by the 120 days from the date this was entered into the registry to comply with the statutory requirements. For example, possessors of such weapons, whether an unlicensed individual or an FFL, regardless of SOT status, may register the firearms to comply with the statutory requirements. As discussed in Section V5B of this preamble, the ATF strongly encourages affected parties to use the e-form system and so forth in order to do that. I'd like to also keep in mind, if you are somebody who's a little bit worried about this and you're kind of freaking out a little bit, all you have to do is take it off. If you take it off and you're concerned about what could possibly happen after the 120 days, you could simply take it off. You don't have to go through all this nonsense here. So let's see. Provided the registration form is properly submitted and documented within the defined time period, the department will consider individuals to be in compliance with the statutory requirements between the date on which the person's application is filed and the date the person receives the ATF's approval or disapproval of the application. After the 120-day registration period following the publication of this rule, registration of previously made or manufactured weapons with stabilizing braces that constitute NFA arms will not be permitted. So basically what they're saying is you have 120 days. If you got something prior to those 120 days, in years back, and after 120 days you're like, okay, you know what, I think I'm going to go ahead and register it. Nope, they're not going to be permitted at that point. You're going to have something that they're going to consider illegal. So there's again, a lot going on here. Now, one of the things we were all wondering about is whether or not they were going to enforce the $200 tax stamp on people that took that opportunity to register within the 120-day window. And according to this, no, they're not going to be charging people the $200 tax stamp. It says the department has determined that a matter of its own enforcement discretion, it will not, as the NPRM suggested as an option, require individuals and FFLs without an SOT to timely register their affected weapons with a stabilizing brace, which are in their possession as of the date of the date this rule is published, to pay the $200 making tax. usually due upon submission of such an application to register. So according to this, they're not banning the possession or use of braces so long as you register it, or so long as you have the ATF take a look at it and classify it as such that it's not considered an SBR. So they're saying that they're not banning it because, people register it, they can still have it and still use it, and so forth. But they still have to justify why they're making such broad sweeping changes that are going to affect so many people. And again, since they can't create law, they're trying to say that, well, Congress already did, and they're just simply enforcing it. And they kind of mention that here in this paragraph to try and maybe, get ahead of these lawsuits. So it says, the Attorney General is responsible for enforcing the GCA as amended and the NFA as amended, and Congress has included provisions in these statutes that authorize the Attorney General to promulgate regulations as are necessary to enforce the provisions of the GCA and NFA. Congress and the Attorney General have delegated the responsibility for administrating and enforcing the GCA and NFA to the Director of the ATF, subject to the discretion of the Attorney General and the Deputy Attorney General, and tells you, what documents to read for that. Establishment, organization, and functions. Accordingly, the Department and ATF have promulgated regulations to implement the GCA and NFA. So they're just saying, again, basically, these things already exist. The NFA, the GCA, they already exist, created by Congress. We're just simply enforcing it. So they also say here that you can always contact the ATF, and the ATF can determine whether or not it's going to be an SBR or not, because, again, there's factoring criteria. But if we just, again, take a look at, the first 11 pages of it, they say themselves that a vast majority or a majority of anything that has a stabilizing brace equipped with a barrel less than 16 inches is going to be considered an NFA item and thus must be registered. So, just going off of that alone, regardless of the factoring criteria, regardless of the forms, regardless of, what options it's going to have or anything else, just the fact that they made that statement alone shows you that they already know that regardless of how you have it set up, it's more than likely, because again, that's what they said, going to be considered an SBR. So they really just screwing everybody. They're screwing everybody here. So it leaves a lot of things up in the air. To me, it's still not clear. After reading this, I still don't even know. That's how difficult that this is, because it's discretionary. It's up to each individual that looks at it in determination, and things that are attached, unattached. There's so much to it. There is no way that somebody could ever have confidence whether or not what they have is, supposedly under the NFA or not. There's no way that somebody without a friggin' law degree is going to look at this and say, I know that what I have either needs to be registered or it needs to be removed under this new rule. I don't think it's possible for the average person to do that. That's also a problem. They have to make it understandable so that any person that reads the new regulation can easily understand it. And it's not easily understandable. It's really crazy. So anyway, when it comes to the rule, it's pretty much what we've been hearing all along. It's just been put on paper. There's been some amendments, but the amendments there's nothing really, major in the amendments. It's just, you have a brace, more than likely, it's going to have to come off, or they're going to want you to register it. You have 120 days from the date that it's, in the Federal Registry to do that. And it says here that, they consider people that have had them for the past, so many years before this rulemaking process was even considered for this, to be in possession of, things that should have been registered. So it's pretty bad. I'm going to try and read it maybe, oh God, I hate to say this, probably 2 more times to see if I can make more sense of it or find any more nuggets in there that I think would be really helpful. But if you watch anything about the brace rule in the past, you probably have a pretty good idea of what's going on now. That's really all I have to say. It's not really all that different. So we'll talk more about this, but I wanted to let you know about it. I want to thank you all very much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Please like, subscribe. You guys have a great day.